All right, hi guys. Okay, so in previous videos we had talked about probability, and probability being the chances that an event will occur. Okay, so for instance, I talked about, well, what's the probability of flipping tails if I have a coin? Well, one side is head, one side is tails, so you only have two total outcomes. So one of those is tails, so then 1 out of 2. Okay, so probability is the chances of an event occurring. Okay, I hope I spelled that right. Okay, so we have probability, so that's probability, the chances of something happening. Okay, but then we have two types of probability. So we have theoretical probability. Okay, so theoretical probability. And then we also have experimental probability. Okay, theoretical and experimental. Okay, theoretical is exactly what it sounds like. Experimental is too, in my opinion. But theoretical. So in the word theoretical, you have the word theory-ish. There's not a Y, but theory, okay? So what I always think of is in theory. So if you think about theoretical probability, think about in theory. So if you, for instance, you say something like, well, in theory, this should happen, okay? Or theoretically speaking, this would be the outcome. Okay, so it's a vocabulary word. Okay, when we say something in theory, it's what we expect to happen. What is expected to happen. Okay, so for instance, if I flip a coin and one outcome is tails and one outcome is heads, well, if I flip that coin, I have a 1 out of 2 chance of getting tails or heads, whichever one you're rooting for. But it's what we expect to happen. So I have a 50% chance of getting heads or tails. That is the theoretical probability. Okay. Now, the other end of that is the experimental probability. And the experimental probability is what actually happens. Okay. So what actually happens? So if I were to, just like in science, do a couple of experiments of this, what would actually be the outcome? Okay, so for instance, if I have tails on one side and heads on the other side of a coin, I might make a chart. Well, on the first flip, I get tails, not heads. On the second flip, I got heads but not tails. On the third flip, I got tails but not heads. And on the fourth flip, I got tails, not heads. Okay, so based off of this experiment, I have a total of 4 trials that I did. And out of those 4 trials, 3 of them were tails. So I have a 3/4 chance of getting tails. Okay, so it's what actually happens after experimenting with it. Okay, so this is after actually doing an experiment. Okay.